The Cal Poly Beef program really focuses on proper beef cattle handling. And the most important aspect of beef cattle handling is low stress. So whenever we do anything, when we're moving cattle, when we're working cattle in a facility, we really strive to focus on handling those animals in a way that reduces the stress to a level that's appropriate. The important thing to consider is that stress can really have an impact on all aspects of beef cattle production, whether that's production efficiency or in general, the animal's actual physiology. Stress can be a major driver of economic loss in the beef cattle industry. Stress that is chronic, so long-term stress, can really have an impact on weight gain, on a number of different attributes related to actual production. So a decrease in milk production, a decrease in feed efficiency. And one thing that's really interesting is that stress can actually decrease the efficacy of vaccines. So whenever we're giving a vaccine to an animal, it's important to manage them in a way that stress is reduced. The Cal Poly facility at the Beef Cattle Evaluation Center was designed to utilize the low-stress cattle handling approach to management of beef cattle. As you see here with one of our beef unit employees, she is walking with these cattle in a very low-stress way. She's not running, she's not hurrying in any aspect, and she's actually moving cattle into the crowding tub. So this particular portion of the facility allows cattle to be maintained in a group. We never want to move cattle individually. We always want them to be in a herd. They are herd animals, and they see humans as a predator. So using this crowding tub allows for the opportunity to move cattle very slowly and efficiently into the lead-up chute, and you'll see as Cedar moves cattle forward, she's doing so in a way that allows them to use their natural behavior. So cattle always want to move in a circle. That's why we use the crowding tub. We always want them to move in a circular motion and use that natural behavior when we're designing our facilities. So next, Aaron Lazanoff, the beef unit manager, is actually demonstrating another approach to facility design instead of a crowding tub like we have at the Beef Cattle Evaluation Center.
Okay, today we're going to talk about bud box, or a different way besides a sweep tub to get cattle into our lead up. This is what we call a typical bud box. The reason it's called that is a guy named Bud Williams I don't know if he designed it, but he's the one that showed people how to use a square box. It was just kind of a natural way of building a lead up. So I'm going to show you exactly how we bring cattle up and how we use it. One thing about a bud box, it actually requires some cattle handling skill versus a sweep tub where you just shove them in there and hope they go down the lead up. So there's advantages of both. This one can be, if you're on foot, be a little more dangerous because you're down in with the cattle. On the sweep tub, you're actually on the outside of it, but not necessarily. We can actually work this bud box from being outside of it also too. So I'm going to show you what happens. I'm going to go up the alleyway here a little bit. As you notice, this bud box, the alley is about 12 foot wide. I believe this bud box is about 19 foot deep. That's kind of a standard size. It seems to work pretty well for bringing up 4 to 5 cows at a time. So our lead up will hold about 5 cows at one time. So that's kind of about what we want to bring up. When we bring cattle up, we want to make sure the lead up is empty. We bring them all the way up here and they go right into the lead up. So they're not standing around. If they're standing around inside this box, they get a little confused as the way we're handling them and where we want them to go. So I'm going to start up here. You're going to pretend like I have 5 cows in front of me and we're coming up this lead up. I'm going to walk up here, bring cows out of that far holding pen. I'm going to zigzag back and forth, never creating pressure directly behind one cow at a time for very long, bringing these cows up. As I bring them up, they're going to come into this box. I'm going to shut this door. The whole idea behind this bed box is the cattle hit the end of it. As I shut that door, I open this door, which goes into our working facility lead up and chute. I will always stay on this side, which is why the reason the door is hinged on that side. We will come in, I will come to about this point here. The cattle are heading it around. They will circle back thinking that they're going to go back out and escape. As they go back this way, then all of a sudden they see this open hole and head down the lead up. it gets to the point where you never want to go around those cattle and try and push them in. It doesn't work very well. You want to put that pressure away from them where they want to come around you and go by you. And you're almost to the point where you have to slow them down. They will go in here so fast that I'll put a little pressure back up, put a little pressure too, or they plug up coming in here because they will come pretty fast, rapidly through here. If we're horseback and we want the cattle a little bit harder to handle, not used to human beings on foot, typically we'll have a person bring cattle up on horses. I'll have a person stand right here on the lead up with a flag. They're working the lead up anyways, and they can just kind of flag them, keep some pressure, momentum, and those cattle will come around me just like I'm in it and come into that lead up too. That way we're not down in the tub with some cattle that are a little bit, that could be a little more aggressive. So it does require quite a bit of skill reading the cattle. And like I said, the most important thing is you don't try to go behind them and push them in. That doesn't work at all. Yet you're putting that pressure away from them. We'll try to train these cattle before we even come up here, having them come by us, learning to run by us or walk by us in an orderly fashion. That helps when they get to this point and then they go in here. So it's a matter of training yourself and the cattle to make a bud box. Very efficient, very simple, easy way to build a lead up. There's no curves. It's just a square box. There's different sizes of them. This one seems to work fairly well for about 5 cows and maybe 1 person horseback also. So, and it's solid-sided. We've had some that are not solid-sided. With the solid-sided, it does help them just turn around and see the one opening hole, and they do go out that. Some people have more of an open side on this side to bring the cows in a little bit easier from the actual alley, and that's probably a little bit easier too. That's the only thing that may be a little difficult with a straight shot coming into a blind box. It's sometimes the cows don't want to come all the way up here too. So, but with the constant pressure zigzagging back and forth behind those cattle, it's pretty easy to drive cattle up here. So, thank you.
So Cedar is actually using the flag in an appropriate way. She's actually using that motion to get the attention of cattle and not using it in a way where she's hitting those cattle on the back, moving them forward. Using that sound and that motion with a flag can actually move cattle forward fairly quickly and efficiently. She's also using the walkway in order to use the animal's flight zone to her advantage. She is walking in a way that moving cattle from the front to the back. So in order to move cattle forward, you have to move past their shoulder, the point of their shoulder, which is going to be their point of recognition before they move forward. And so cows tend to move in a pattern where they move back to where they came from. And so whenever we can use that to our advantage, that's really helpful. You also notice once cattle get into the actual squeeze chute, this is where we can use that pressure to squeeze an animal. It provides a sense of comfort, similar to what Dr. Temple Grandin has utilized in a lot of her facility design. That pressure actually relieves stress. And it's similar to some forms of autism where that pressure from a hug actually gives some relief of stress, particularly in a stressful environment. And so we want to make sure that we use that working facility so that it relieves cattle stress in any way that we can. And so Cedar is demonstrating that you never want to put your body in any way close to that animal's head, particularly when they're in a squeeze chute. You want to make sure that you never want to put your head or any other part of your body anywhere where it could be injured. Cattle can move their heads up and down. Obviously, this is an area of restraint. And so anytime cattle are in a restraint, at first they're going to be fairly high stress, and then that pressure is going to alleviate that stress over time. So here you see some tire tread in front of the chute. This is really important to have in your facility design because it provides traction for those animals once they leave the working facility. What's really important about the design of a facility is that anytime an animal has a negative experience in a facility, that's going to change their behavior. So next time they come into the facility, they're going to have a higher level of stress. They're not going to work as quickly and efficiently. So you really want to make sure that that experience is a positive one as best as you can. Here we're in the loadout chute where you see it's a fairly steep incline. there has to be a very appropriate level of incline for that loading chute. So this chute is used when we're shipping cattle in a truck, particularly a semi-truck, and moving them to another facility. So you'll notice these metal bars are providing traction. You'll notice the solid sides to prevent any distraction. That's really important for a facility as well. You always want to make sure that that facility is designed in a way that you're going to limit any distraction for those cattle, because that alleviates stress, it alleviates any kind of fear. Now we want to take you through the viewpoint from an animal. So we're moving through the crowding tub. You'll notice the solid sides throughout the facility. You'll notice that as an animal moves forward in a circular motion, we're able to move cattle single file through this facility. And notice that this is a curved pattern. Again, we want cattle to use and mimic their natural behavior in our facility design. They always want to move back to where they came from. And so that allows us to design facilities to use that behavior to our advantage. So now we're moving into the squeeze chute, where we can open the back gate using a hydraulic pressure system. We're able to use that squeeze to alleviate stress. And we always want to make sure that that opening is wide enough so that cattle see that they can get out and move to the rest of the facility. And so it's important when we're designing facilities to think about cattle vision and think about how cattle hear, so their auditory ability. Cattle have a unique vision where obviously those eyes are on the side of their head, so they're able to see almost completely behind them. They cannot see straight in front of them. They cannot see straight behind them. So we have to, as animal handlers, use that knowledge. We also have to consider that cattle want to move from dark to light. So from a dark space to a light space, as opposed from a light space to a dark space. So whenever we design facilities, we want to make sure we use light to our advantage. A dark space will actually cause cattle to feel fear and feel stress. And so we can use that to our advantage when we're designing a facility. Also, in terms of their auditory ability, we want to limit shouting. We want to decrease any amount of talking that we have while working cattle. We also can consider using some kind of squeeze chute or mechanism to reduce the amount of noise from a hydraulic chute. So there are a couple opportunities to limit the amount of stress we can put an animal through the design of the actual working facility. Now we're going to transition into some of the tools we can use. So Cedar is demonstrating the use of a flag. So the flag is more used for the actual noise associated with waving that flag. You'll notice that she really doesn't have to use it very often. She's really only using it in order to move those cattle in a herd. Once they start moving, she no longer uses that flag, but once they stop, she uses that flag. This is a rattle paddle that she's demonstrating now. Again, this is also used for the noise aspect. So we're really only focused on the noise associated with a lot of our tools. At Cal Poly and many other beef cattle handling facilities, we choose not to use an electric prod or what is commonly referred to as a hot shot. There's really no need to use any kind of electric prod. You have to consider that with the use of any kind of electric prod or any kind of stressful experience for cattle can really have an impact on performance. And so it really relies on patience. Patience is a virtue, and it's a virtue that myself and others probably lack, definitely myself, but it's something to think about. You really have to be patient when working with cattle because it reduces stress for you, it reduces stress for them, and it also reduces any opportunity for injury. Here, Cedar is actually showing you what an animal's flight zone looks like. So she's moving into that flight zone. As she moves past the point of the shoulder towards the rear end of the animal, that animal starts to move forward. Here you'll notice that this animal really has no flight zone whatsoever. And so flight zone is going to be based on an individual animal basis. And so she really is moving to a point where she's focusing on using that animal's behavior to her advantage when working with them. So oftentimes it can actually be frustrating if an animal has little to no flight zone because that animal is so used to human contact. And so that typically happens in The dairy industry, those animals typically have a very limited flight zone. Whereas here, in this circumstance, where our beef unit employees are working cattle on horseback, their flight zone is going to be a lot different out on native rangeland. So this is at the Cal Poly Escuela Ranch, where we're moving cattle in the Cal Poly beef herd, about 150 animals at once. And you'll notice that we're using a wedge-shaped pattern here to move cattle into the next pasture. And so typically there's going to be one animal that is the leader, and that lead animal is going to be the one you want to focus on. You want to make sure that you leave behind those stragglers, because animals are always going to return to the herd. That's a part of their natural behavior. And you'll notice here that they're moving from side to side in a zigzag pattern, using a wedge-shaped pattern to move cattle forward. That's really important to consider when you're moving cattle in an open pasture.